Hey everyone, how's it going? Obviously if you click this video, you already know what it is, but we are going to spin the wheel right now to figure out what my next video is going to be. So let's figure this out. Looks like it's going to be my one Discord suggestion that I had by Shadow Roxas 870, which is what if when Anakin is not granted the rank of Master, he finally hits that breaking point, but instead of getting mad, he falls to his knees and asks the Jedi Council, why does it seem like they hate him? I'm obviously gonna need to push that down a tiny bit so it could fit, but thank you, Shadow Roxas. And just because it was a Discord, I will keep these non-Discord ends for the next one. So you might have 8 suggestions on the next wheel that you see. But alright, without that, let's get right into the intro. What's up everyone, how's it going? Today, we're going to figure out what would have happened if instead of getting angry or even attacking the Jedi Council, what if Anakin would have broke down in front of them after being denied the rank of Master? How would this change the views that the Jedi have on Skywalker? Would they push him further down the dark path, or would they save him from a dark future? Let's find out right now. Our story begins towards the end of the Clone Wars. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, saved the Chancellor, who was Anakin's good friend and mentor-like figure, from Count Dooku and General Grievous. But for Anakin, this was only the start of the great news. His wife, Padme Amidala, was pregnant with his kid. Anakin became overwhelmed with joy as he held his wife in a warm embrace. That night, however, his joy shifted. He was getting visions again, like he had when his mother passed away, but this time, it was of his wife dying in childbirth. All he saw was pain in Padme's eyes and the ear-screeching screams of Padme in pain. It replayed over and over until Anakin suddenly jolted awake with a scream. Anakin was covered in night sweats and he looked over at Padme, who was awakened when he screamed. Padme asked what he was doing and what was wrong, and Anakin explained the visions to Padme, also adding that he would not let these ones come true. The conversation then continued until both Padme and Anakin tried going back to sleep, with Padme obviously more successful than Anakin. That next day, however, Anakin was invited into Palpatine's office and was appointed to be the Chancellor's personal representative, with the Chancellor expressing fears of the Masters on the Council. Anakin agreed and went to go meet with the Masters. This is what Anakin needed if he wanted to save Padme. He'd become a Master. He could go into the restricted sections of the archives. He could learn some power that could be used to save Padme. He just knew it. He had to act quickly. He was too late to save his mom, so he couldn't be too late to save Padme. He just couldn't. Anakin's emotions were already high after executing Dooku, who was unarmed, and this added stress just made Anakin more anxious than ever. Would the Council even allow him on that very same Council? It seemed unlikely, as he told Palpatine, but due to Palpatine's emergency powers, he had direct control over the Jedi Temple, and therefore direct authority over the Jedi. They had to accept Palpatine's terms. But how would Anakin be viewed? Questions flurried through his mind as he made his way towards the temple. He made his way up into the council chambers and told the members what Palpatine said, and how he has to be appointed as a personal representative in the Jedi Council. The Jedi were shocked and made Anakin leave as they debated this. Anakin exited the elevator and couldn't sit or stand still. He had to move. His mind was racing. Padme couldn't die. After what seemed like a millennium, the council called him back up. He stood in the center of what seemed like everything as the council started speaking. They told Anakin that he was on the council, but he was not granted the rank of Master. The burst of emotions overcame Anakin in an instant. He felt rage, anger, but most importantly in this moment, he felt dread. Anakin zoned out after Windu said these words. All he could think about was his wife, his kid, and even Palpatine in this moment. The Jedi were holding him back, and eventually he realized. "You killed her," Anakin said in a state of shock. In the council's eyes, it looked like Anakin had just been shot. Anakin couldn't hold in his emotions any longer. He got on his knees and burst out in tears, repeating the same phrase, You killed her." The council, for a fleeting second, didn't know what to do. This was extremely abnormal for Anakin, or any Jedi for that matter, to show this amount of emotion. Many of the older council members found this disgraceful to the council members, but eventually Windu spoke up, and the cold and harsh told Skywalker to get up and to compose himself. But Anakin didn't hear anything but the screams of Padme in his dreams. He stared in one direction, and his gaze went 1,000 of miles. Obi-Wan watched from his seat on the council, and he felt true pain for Anakin, and felt for his former apprentice. And eventually Obi-Wan got up and got by Anakin's side. The tears have subsided, and now his eyes were just an empty void. Yoda, who was silent until now, spoke up, not to Anakin, but to the council. Be very careful, we must. Push Skywalker away from the light, we cannot. Everyone in the chambers knew what this meant. There would be no mission to spy on the Chancellor. Anakin clearly needed some type of help. If not Anakin himself, someone close to him. Anakin, meanwhile, was stuck in a state of shock. He was spiraling. He couldn't understand. This was his chance to save the one person he had, but he isn't strong enough. Anakin's state of shock lasted for hours, with the council even calling temple guards to take Anakin to the med bay, while the council talked amongst themselves about how to handle the Skywalker situation. Some masters put the pieces together and realized Anakin had formed an attachment, and wanted to ban him from the order, but Yoda quickly dismissed this, saying to the other members that if Anakin is barred from the Jedi Order, he would very quickly become influenced, if he wasn't already, by the Sith. Obi-Wan added by saying that Anakin hadn't been the same since his mission to save the Chancellor. He's been different. Obi-Wan also added that losing attachments was Anakin's biggest flaw. He couldn't just drop someone he's grown to care about. It was just in his nature. The council bickered back and forth about the ongoing problem until Anakin was fully conscious, and a couple of the members went down to check on Anakin. Anakin was extremely embarrassed. He couldn't remember a thing since he got back from Palpatine's office, but with what the medical droid told him, he wasn't happy with his actions. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Shaak Ti, and Kit Fisto all arrived to meet Anakin after he woke back up, most for questions, but Obi-Wan was there to be sure that his friend was genuinely okay. Anakin apologized profusely for the actions, but truthfully, everyone in there knew it wasn't him who was in those chambers. They just needed to figure out why and who that was. After some brief conversation, Obi-Wan started by asking what happened while he was knocked out on the invisible hand while saving the Chancellor. Obi-Wan explained, after a look of confusion and regrets from Anakin, that beforehand, the aura that Anakin held was light and friendly, but by the time he woke up, it turned dark and fearful. Anakin stumbled over his words, but eventually he told the group. He told them how he defeated Dooku, but he wasn't dead. Anakin had his sabers around Dooku's neck and was planning to arrest the Sith, but how Palpatine told him to execute Dooku and push for the death. Anakin just couldn't ignore the superior's commands, so he did it, knowing it wasn't the Jedi way. The masters all looked at each other, the same thought going through all of their heads, but they stayed quiet. They all had their feelings that Palpatine was the Sith Lord, or at least working with the Sith. And although this wasn't proof, this is a step in the right direction. Though many could argue that this was just a political ploy to gain more power for himself by taking out a political enemy. The Masters then told Anakin his actions wouldn't have consequences, and barred Anakin from leaving the Jedi Temple. Anakin was disappointed but realized he made a mistake, and the Masters left. All except for Obi-Wan, who stood there, questioningly towards Anakin. His question shocked Anakin when he said it. Padme is in danger, isn't she? Anakin stuttered over his words. His mind was a scribble as he thought about what to say, but eventually he just told the truth, which was all he could come up with. He explained the visions he was having about Padme dying in childbirth, and soon Obi-Wan understood the depths of Anakin's pain. Obi-Wan thought of the words to say, but soon realized Anakin needed a friend more than a scolding at this point, so Obi-Wan just smiled and congratulated his former student. This, in turn, relieved Anakin immensely, but Obi-Wan continued. He asked Anakin to explain, as in depth as he was comfortable to, about the nightmares. What was in them? What did they consist of? It was hard for Anakin, but eventually he got it off his chest. He explained the vision in depth. Obi-Wan could tell it was bothering him because he explained every little detail like it was right in front of him. Obi-Wan took this in and then asked Anakin who else knew of his marriage, and Anakin said that the only other person was Palpatine, which shook Kenobi to the core. Even if it was a slim chance that Palpatine was the Sith Lord, the Jedi could not risk the Sith knowing what will make Anakin, the Chosen One, vulnerable, especially with the Chancellor ordering the execution of Dooku. Obi-Wan then asked Anakin one final question after a bit of thought, one that initially shocked Anakin. Would there be any possible chance that you would be getting these visions from an outside influence? Anakin stuttered. He didn't think so. Why would there be an outside influence? Obi-Wan elaborated, asking Anakin if there was anyone either inside or outside the Order pulling him away from the Jedi, to not trust the Jedi. Anakin kept searching and searching, but he could only come up with one answer the whole time: the Chancellor. Just before the council meeting that day, he was telling Anakin how the Jedi were power hungry and how Palpatine was fearful of that. Anakin said the Chancellor, but quickly rebutted, saying that there was no way to know if Palpatine was going to give Anakin these visions or not, or if there even was an outside influence. Obi-Wan agreed, but told Anakin it would be best to know truthfully, and that there was a way, and that the Jedi could figure it out. But Anakin needed to trust Obi-Wan. And after much hesitation, Anakin agreed, intrigued and fearful of the prospect of someone being in his head. Anakin, though, had to tell Yoda about his visions and what they consisted of. But Obi-Wan understood Anakin's fear, but he had faith that the Jedi would not kick him out. After telling Yoda everything, they came up with a game plan on how to enter Skywalker's head at night, go into the vision, and hopefully find the cause. By the time night came, Obi-Wan and Yoda sat outside of Anakin's room, feeling into the Force, protecting Anakin's aura. Anakin fell into a sleep peacefully, but soon had the dreams that he always had. But with the help of Yoda and Obi-Wan, Anakin was able to fight these visions, and was able to see through them. But he couldn't see what Yoda and Obi-Wan saw. They saw a man laughing over a blue cauldron, supposedly giving the dream to Anakin. And Yoda soon realized it was the same building as the vision he was in with Skywalker fighting the Dark Lord. The figure, though, really quickly figured someone broke into Anakin's mind and cut off the vision, which woke Anakin up. All he saw that whole time was the destruction of the temple, the place he had so many good and bad memories. Anakin jumped up and ran out of his room and saw Yoda and Obi-Wan stood there. Yoda had a grim look on his face. The reality of the situation dawned on them both, and on Skywalker once they told him that the Sith was in his mind. Yoda then spoke up and surprised both Jedi with what he said next. He explained the vision he had during the Clone Wars and how he didn't act on it, but maybe that wasn't the time he had to. He could take Skywalker now and fight Sidious and hopefully bring an end to all of this, complete the vision, and bring an end to this war. Obi-Wan pleaded with Yoda to go, but he said this was a mission for he and Skywalker only. Yoda of course gave Skywalker the option to opt out, but Anakin wanted to reclaim his own mind. He wanted to free himself of these mental chains he was in, so he agreed to go along, even though he was supposed to be in the temple. This was a quote-unquote off-the-books mission. Not even the council was to know. Obi-Wan was to give it 3 days, and if they didn't return, to inform the Jedi Council what has happened and the location. Obi-Wan begrudgingly agreed, and soon the duo of Yoda and Anakin was in a speeder, on their way towards the industrial sector of Coruscant. And once there, they both felt a strong pull of the dark side towards a building, and Yoda told them to approach and land. Yoda explained to Skywalker that this will be the most difficult battle he was ever a part of, but to always trust in the Force. Yoda also told Skywalker that he has to resist the temptations of the dark, and that no matter what happens in there, Anakin is an amazing Jedi and will become a wonderful father. Yoda, at this point, realized Anakin's attachment and love for Padme was his weakness, but in a weird way, it was also his strength. He fed off the attachment. It gave him strength and serenity, and Yoda wanted Anakin to realize how his power doesn't come from being powerful, but it comes from the people who truly care about him. Anakin nodded understandingly as he landed and exited the speeder along with Yoda. They soon entered a dark warehouse reminiscent of the one Yoda saw in Anakin's dream, with the cauldron whispering towards them, calling to them. They both ignited their lightsabers for some light as each casually walked towards the cauldron, expecting something to jump out at them at any moment, but it never happened. They reached the cauldron as Anakin looked inside, and as soon as he did, blue fire lit up the warehouse from all directions. The whispers grew louder as loud cackling was heard. A voice boomed over the whispers as it told the Jedi that it knows everything, and it knew they would be here, and due to their arrogance, they would die. And in an instant, the fire dissipated and the room was pitch black until Anakin felt something in the Force and ignited his lightsaber. He blocked without a moment to spare. A red lightsaber was locked with his as the Sith had caught him off guard, and by the time Yoda reacted, the Sith deignited his lightsaber and moved to catch Yoda off guard, which he did, but Yoda's speed was undeniable and he too also blocked it. And as the fire sparked once again, the Jedi were face to face with the Sith Lord that was getting away from them for over a decade. His hood over his head as he held a lightsaber with a red hue. The figure smiled and asked Anakin if he wanted to save Padme, save his wife, and save his child from an unfortunate death. As the Sith Lord spoke, Yoda saw Anakin's wavering moments. He couldn't take much more deceit from the Sith, so Yoda did something out of the ordinary for himself. He initiated the battle with a quick strike, catching Sidious off guard, and Anakin pushed in with Yoda, and as Anakin realized what Yoda was doing, saving Anakin. The mixture of red, blue, and green lightsabers created a rainbow of deadly strikes in a fight not only to the death, but for the fate of the galaxy. Yoda with his quick and agile attacks, along with Anakin's powerful and precise moves, was a duo that wasn't to be messed with. But Sidious's true power and strength in the dark side parried every move with a quick precision. Sidious shot lightning at Anakin, who wasn't quick enough, and got flown back towards the wall with electricity as Yoda kept up the attack. Yoda was not going to lose focus. He couldn't. He allowed the Sith to grow, and this couldn't be the end. He couldn't fail. This one time, he just couldn't, and he wouldn't fail. Anakin soon regained his composure as he chased after the streaks of red and green as they made their way outside onto a catwalk overlooking the skyline of Coruscant, with what seemed to be a pit to the end of the planet under them. Anakin soon jumped over Sidious as Sidious began being attacked from both sides, but he soon unleashed a second lightsaber and was able to block every move made by the Jedi. In between one of the blocks, Sidious started cutting the wires off the catwalk, ever so slightly making the catwalk list, but the Jedi prevented this as much as they could. But soon, Sidious shot Yoda with lightning as he was down on the catwalk, with Sidious now having his attention towards Skywalker, who was on the weak side of the catwalk. Without Yoda, this fight very quickly made its way into the Sith Lord's favor, and Anakin was pushed onto the defensive. The catwalk creaked every time a step was made, with every step feeling like the last. Yoda got up, regained himself, and attacked, but the Sith Lord realized and blocked, parried, and kicked Yoda almost aside. Almost kicked him fully off, but Yoda was holding on by a singular hand. Sidious continued to cut the wire while battling with Anakin, but Anakin soon found a weak spot. The last wire was hanging, keeping everything up. Anakin thought back to his wife and his kid, and knew how happy they would be if he kept the galaxy safe. So, he threw his lightsaber, not at Sidious, but at the wire. And in Sidious's moment of confusion, Anakin pulled Sidious as hard as he could towards him, and the lightsaber made contact with the wire as the Sith Lord's neck came into Anakin's hand. But with that came the Sith Lord's lightsaber into Anakin's stomach, as the three souls started falling into the abyss. Yoda saw this and climbed up the falling catwalk, grabbed Anakin's lightsaber that was still coming back towards him, and cut down Sidious in his moment of confusion, before grabbing Anakin and accepted both of their fates, as they fell down into the never-ending abyss below, knowing that they defeated the Sith. The whole temple felt it at once. For what seemed to be the first time in their lives, they felt true light, but now with the feeling of death as well. Obi-Wan knew the moment it happened, that his old Padawan has fallen, but when he felt the lights overtake the dark, he knew Anakin had accomplished what he had to do, and so had Yoda. Before going to the council chambers to let them know what had happened, Obi-Wan made his way into Anakin's room
It was just like before, and the time before, and the time before. It was the most decorated room in the temple, the room that had the most personality. Like Anakin had more personality than any Jedi. Obi-Wan sat on Anakin's bed, and, while shedding a tear from his eye, he spoke aloud. "You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you," and stood up, regained his composure, and walked out, leaving behind memories that would never be forgotten. Obi-Wan made his way to the council chambers and explained what happened like Yoda asked. The council was surprised by this act of aggression from Yoda, but deemed it necessary to save the Republic and the Jedi. And with that, Yoda and Anakin, though their bodies would never be recovered, they would have an open casket funeral, which was open to the Republic, to pay their respects to the hero of the Republic, which had more people travel to Coruscant to view than ever before. Yoda and Anakin would be dropped onto the roof of the Jedi Temple, a graveyard in the home of where both of them grew up. Padme, of course, would attend Anakin's funeral, but the stress would put her into labor early, but she would survive and end up having the twins. Plo Koon would become Grand Master in a letter that was left behind by Yoda before he left. Plo Koon took Yoda and Anakin's final action and didn't let it be in vain. He knew the Jedi had to grow and adapt and not become complacent. So soon, the Order would allow attachments, and Padme would even allow her and Anakin's kids, Luke and Leia, to be trained as Jedi, with them still being extremely close to their mother, like Anakin would have liked. The Republic, however, was in chaos after the disappearance of their leader. Soon, a vote of no confidence was held and was passed with an overwhelming majority, and they soon elected a leader from the planet of Corellia to lead the Republic. The Clone Wars would come to an end, but with tensions still high. But with Plo Koon soon deciding to leave the Republic, the tensions were soon eased as the Jedi went out to make an official peace treaty, which was soon signed, and there was peace in this never-ending galaxy.